I'm going to speak as a progressive activist, not as an academic. And I can confine the good news about the election in 2 words: Trump lost. There's a lot of bad news, and that's that Trump's party did very, very well. They gained US House seats, they gained state legislature seats, they even gained a governor's mansion. And it is sobering, other panelists have referred to the 73.5 million voters who voted for Trump, most of whom did it very enthusiastically, many of whom did it based on racial and gender resentments and fear and loathing of immigrants. So that's very sobering. In my lifetime, the only other time I can recall an open racist demagogue running for president and actually getting somewhere, it was Governor George Wallace, the segregationist from Alabama, who ran for president in 1968 and 1972. And he utterly shocked the country when he won the Democratic primary in 72 in my home state, Michigan, which is not exactly a Confederate state. So jump forward from that shock, and you have Donald Trump not just challenging, but becoming the president, using the presidency to keep building a movement of reaction and racism. Those supporters of Trump are not going away, and Donald Trump is not going away. It would not stun me at all if he ran for president again in 2024, but he will be a big presence in media. There are many reasons Trump succeeded quite recently, and George Wallace failed 50 years ago. And I would argue that one of the reasons is that there is now, built up over the last few decades, a national right-wing media infrastructure. In Wallace's time, there was right-wing media, but it was more fringe or confined to the US South. But now it's national. And if I was proud to have worked on a documentary that exposes the power and the persuasive ability aimed at white, especially white males, middle class and working class. That documentary is The Brainwashing of My Dad, directed by Jen Sanko. And she talks about her dad and thousands of other dads who were once middle of the road, nice white guys, and they ended up becoming very right wing because of the power of talk radio, Fox News, and now online, Breitbart and what have you. So returning to Trump's loss, I credit grassroots groups in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia. That's what made the difference. Grassroots groups got out the vote of people of color, got out the vote of young people. These groups were energized not by their support of Biden, but by their fear and loathing of Trump. And most of these grassroots groups are actually in the progressive wing of the party, allied with AOC, allied with Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders. I'm proud to have been part of this upsurge. I helped launch the hashtag Vote Trump Out campaign, which was mostly social media because of COVID, but not exclusively. We did not endorse Biden, but we sure helped Biden defeat Trump in Michigan, and especially important in Wisconsin and Arizona. In Wisconsin, we were organizing alongside Justin Blake, who was the uncle of Jacob Blake, who was shot 7 times by the cops in the back while his kids watched. And there was all that energy in Kenosha around Black Lives Matter that was translated into electoral energy. So very different than what I'm describing is why I think Biden won in these key states. Very different than this grassroots energy. The Democratic leadership spent millions of dollars on TV ads aimed at what they call persuadables, or they sometimes actually call these people moderate Republicans. Now, after Reagan, Bush, Gingrich, Bush, McConnell, Trump. I believe there are only 18 moderate Republicans left in the country, but millions of dollars went in that direction while these grassroots groups I'm referring to were struggling for cash and resources, and that happens in every election. Pei mentioned the blame game. I'm in the middle of this battle. You had the right wing of the Democratic Party, the corporate wing of the Democratic Party is blaming progressives, blaming Black Lives Matter, blaming demands to defund police, Medicare for all, democratic socialism. The reality is simple, and AOC has pointed this out in tweet after tweet. Those Democratic House incumbents in swing districts who co-sponsored enhanced Medicare for all, they all won. Every Democrat in a swing district running for House re-election who co-sponsored the Green New Deal, which is really a jobs bill, all but one of them won. Who lost? It were these wishy-washy Democrats who didn't stand for anything and now blame Black Lives Matter and progressives for their losses. And I encourage people to read AOC's interview in the New York Times, where she rebuts this blame game that's coming from the mainstream media and the corporate Democrats. Let me end with a media observation or two. It's unique in modern history that the corporate liberal media or the middle of the road media, whatever you want to call it, MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, the broadcast networks, they basically campaigned against an incumbent president for a couple of years. They regularly and matter-of-factly and correctly reported that the president was lying. And that's what journalists should do. But I think I have to remind people how unusual that is. That, and of course, Trump lied more boldly and with more rapidity than any previous president in modern history. But all previous presidents have lied. And the mainstream media has never called them out, indeed, usually complicit in the lies. They were complicit in the buildup to the war in Vietnam, and probably it's easier for people to remember how complicit the mainstream media were in the lies that led to the invasion of Iraq. As we look to the next year in terms of media, I fear that the middle of the road mainstream media will go back to their normal stance, which is allowing Democratic Party and political leaders to lie. We know Joe Biden was lying through the campaign. He lied about his vote in support of the invasion of Iraq. He lied about his willingness to cut Medicare and Social Security, and the mainstream media did not call him out on it. They helped cover up for those lies. And that's what I expect from the mainstream media. Do I have time for one more short media note, Raza, or should I stop?
Yes, you may, please.
Okay, real
Just 30
quick.
seconds.
I think it's a good thing that the mainstream media, mainstream journalists were regularly discussing how Donald Trump was not listening to the scientists about COVID. They paraded dozens of scientists, epidemiologists, public health experts, infectious disease experts, hour after hour on cable news to show that Trump was ignoring the science. But as I pointed out in a column that was on a bunch of websites yesterday, including commondreams.org, Biden and most corporate Democrats refuse often to listen to the scientists when it comes to climate change. We know this, but I don't think anyone should hold their breath waiting for CNN and MSNBC, the allegedly liberal, allegedly anti-Trump channels. I don't think they're going to be parading bold, blunt talking scientists hour after hour to tell us how Biden is largely ignoring the science of climate change. I encourage people to see how different mainstream media covers Biden than how they covered Trump. And there are really reasons that they should be consistent when we go into the Biden era.